Hello and welcome, Exiles, to my take on Animate Weapon of Self-Reflection. This is an ability that allows you to summon an animate weapon that copies the weapon you're holding. You see, we have an energy blade, which I think looks really cool, and thematically, we summon a bunch of lightsabers that follow around and defeat our enemies for us. Now, why do I think this is a decent league starter or solid? Well, you'll notice with my Spellblade League Starter, I think a lot of things are very strong with Energy Blade because it's easy to get a decently high energy shield number to get a lot of flat that normally you're not going to have access to early on. You'll see my gem level of my skill is level 17. This is going to be the case for most spell skills. Most things are going to be level 17, level 18. They're going to be on the lower damage end, and then things like Spellblade or Energy Blade is something where you can stay on a high amount of flat and you can surpass what you would normally have in terms of power earlier on. Obviously, this is something that will plateau as those other gem levels will catch up in levels, stuff like that, etc. But it gives an interesting aspect to a league starter. Now, this energy blade we have has 100 to 2,000 energy. So every single one of these minions, I can summon up to 6 of them, does this amount of lightning damage, and then scaled by the rest of my tree where I have minion damage, minion attack speed, minion pen. I believe I have around here somewhere. That's accuracy, but you get the idea. I summon 6 of these guys. I curse the enemy with conductivity. I kind of jump around and they just go ham slicing away. Now, ultimately, I just play this character. I just try to make this character. I thought it would be a fun thing to try out. And I have to say, honestly, it's a pretty strong build, at least early on. We were able to do a level 69 Sanctum with relative ease. It wasn't very hard. It was pretty much just summon my blades and jump around while they killed the enemy, and they did pretty good at that. So it does pass the test for being a build you can rush Sanctum with. And number 2 is it's pretty cheap in terms of gear. Now, I will say this, it's not going to work on SSF. Just isn't going to work. Unless you randomly drop a Ghost Wraith and a Calm's Root in your SSF run, don't do it. Because personally, I think Ghost Wraith you need if you're going to scale ES to a high number early, and Calm's Roots you need if you're going to deal with stun. Because the problem with Ghost Wraith is it cuts your HP pool basically in half, making you very susceptible to stuns, freezes, and chills. Calm's Root solves all of those, has a bunch of life. This works great if you have a movement skill like Leap Slam, where you're jumping around, where you don't really feel the badness of the movement, because you don't have a lot of movement, you don't have movement speed on your build. But since we have a lot of attack speed, this doesn't feel too bad, right? We can still jump around pretty fast, feels fine for clear. The thing is, you kind of need this if you're going to start with Ghost Wraith early, just because it solves a very potent problem you have with these sorts of builds. Now, outside of that, I have not min-maxed this character well. I haven't set up a Spectre with Feeding Frenzy. That's something you'd end up going to later. You'd end up investing in min-maxing this into an Ivory Tower setup. Eventually, you scale more ES. You then end up with a high ES pool. You have to go bow. You have to get Core Scaling Elixir. You have to do the works. But this build will scale. I think it plateaus out. I think you probably could take this character all the way up into doing Ubers decently, but not like overkill good. For example, the thing that I think separates this build from a self-cast Spellblade character is Wrathpith, Iron Will. Both of those things give you a bunch of percent damage while investing into the stat that makes your ES number go big. Whereas if I'm playing this minion build, I'm going to need clusters with percent minion damage. I have to grab nodes with percent minion damage. I have to separate my investment. So you're not going to scale as high of ES number. You're not going to scale into the insane damage while also scaling an insane ES number. It's going to have that limitation. That being said, for early league, it does pretty well. Ultimately, I went with Guardian because I think it will end up scaling ES quite well with the Radiant Faith node. This gets better and better the more instant strength and ES scaling you have. Along with that, recovery, sustain, time of need. Eventually, I think if I min-max this character, I would go uber loud, where I would go Unwavering Faith, Time of Need, Radiant Faith, and Bastion of Hope. But initially, as a league start character, I go Radiant Crusade, and that just carries the clear to begin with. And that being said, another benefit of this character is you go Radiant Crusade, you have that easy early game where you are able to farm yourself basically a few C worth of gear, Calm's Heart, Ghost Wraith, Crown of Thorns, or just a regular Hubris with like an ES craft. Honestly, Crown of Thorns is pretty bad, so you want to place this pretty early on. But the point is, a few chaos of gear and this character's up and running. Essentially do a chaos recipe a couple times or jump on a heist for a few demo contracts. Whatever you got to do to get these essential pieces. And man, Rudy is still going. This guy never stops. Anyways, I think he's going to hit 30,000. As I was saying, the advantage of this character on a league start scenario is you can use any random 6-link you want. I will say this because we have an axe right now. It can be an axe. It can be a sword. It can be a staff. This is one of the things I was thinking about with a spellcaster, but the spellcaster had the issue of it pretty much had to be all blue sockets. Whereas with Animate Weapon, I can use multi-strike, I can use wed, I can use faster attacks, I could probably even use momentum, I can use minion damage, I can use meat shield. Probably don't want to do that, that'd make them stick too close to you. You can use a lot of different supports that all work. Minion speed, lightning pen, a lot of color combinations, which means you can get away with pretty much any base weapon type, which means the early on random 6-link melee weapon that is normally 5 to 10 C on trade is your 6-link and you have it, and it's a huge power spike to you as playing this sort of character. So I think that's something you should look out for, as this has quite strong league start potential for that alone. Now, anyways, I'm going to get into this little fields map just to show you what it looks like as a level 72 character. I didn't buy a Sanctum to show you Sanctum, but just know it does Sanctum pretty well. It doesn't have quite as high of damage as the Spellblade Selfcaster, but it'll do that pretty well. And I haven't killed Kitava on this character. Another thing I want to mention is specifically when I was thinking about this character, I was testing it on a Sanctum rush situation, is I was specifically thinking, okay, I'm going to not kill Kitava in order to keep that 30 Chaos Res, so that way I have 43 Chaos Res, and at 2k life, that's pretty tanky as far as a life-based character goes against Chaos damage. If you end up getting Chaos Res cap, even though we have a low HP pool, it ends up feeling pretty good, and I just kind of forgot I was doing that. But I guess I could show you what it looks like to kill, I don't know, we'll run down this one-act boss here, this guy, I don't know what his name is, Veronarius, or I don't know freaking what his name is. He's a fairly tanky campaign boss, but hopefully he'll give you an idea of what the damage and what the clear looks like. Essentially, we are jumping around, and whenever we see like a pack where we want the monsters to die, I will press Convocation. The Lightsaber dudes can focus down the rares, and the Sentinel of Radiance, he handles the clear, essentially. Whenever I pop him, he will degen all the low HP monsters, which will allow the minions to focus on enemies. That being said, I do believe eventually, if you're like min-maxing this build, you'll probably want to eventually do like melee splash or something on these minions, so that way they can, what's the word? So that way they can actually clear better, because them by themselves, they aren't very good at clear. They do decent single target, but their clear is pretty abysmal because they are single hitting enemies. They're basically going around heavy striking or whatever ability they're using. It's hitting one enemy and then causes a little bit of spell splash damage if the enemy's close by. It's not very significant. But regardless, you basically just summon these guys as you're jumping around and they do all the work. You don't have to think too much and you just jump around and have a good time. Ultimately, if I was a minion enjoyer, I would heavily consider this build just because it fulfills what I believe is the best possible currency league start, which is forcing Sanctum early. I don't know if SRS can do it. It might be able to. I'm not too familiar with SRS as a build, how much gear you need to make it to the point where it's viable for Sanctum. But I can say with confidence this character is, and I think it's pretty fun to play. You have little lightsabers following you around. I think it's a good time. Now, let's go ahead and try to get to this one boss here so I can show you what some of the single target on these guys looks like as we go through where this desecrated chambers, whatever the zone's called. Ultimately, it's kind of a fun experience for this character because basically every point I grab is me getting more damage. Like, for example, I pick up life, that makes me have more ES, which is more damage. I pick up ES, that makes me have more ES, which makes me have more damage. I pick up minion speed, that makes me have that makes the minions attack faster or whatever, right? It all ends up impacting. Does the speed run affect minions? I don't know if it does or not. Regardless, we'll go and fight this guy real quick here and give you a little demonstration of what it looks like when these dudes fight. This is what their single target would look like. We do not have the Guardian here. I didn't convocate him over because I didn't want to have people think, oh, the Guardian, Sentinel of Radiance is doing all the damage. Ultimately, the Lightning guys do, I don't know, majority of the single target. This guy helps a little bit. He's maybe equivalent to the damage of 1 or 2 blades. I'm not 100% sure. Mainly, he's there to help out with the clear because the clear on these guys is abysmal. They can attack one enemy at a time. They're pretty rough. The one thing I would say while doing this character and I was running a Sanctum, the one issue I had is minion AI is just really stupid. I would summon them all. I'd be next to a Sanctum guard, and then I would jump around, and the minions would start following me instead of attacking the guy. And the main thing I think you solve is you just after your first Sanctum, you put your Chaos, you go buy yourself 6-link sword, and you use Predator support, or you just swap in Predator support instead of Lightning Pen or whatever, just so you can make them target the enemy and actually aggro it correctly. Is the one thing I would say. Anyways, this is a character I just want to test out and try, and actually I enjoyed it quite a bit. This is a Guardian using Animate Weapon of Self-Reflection. I think it's a fun little thing. I don't think this will be too, what's the word? competitive or expensive. I don't think a lot of other people will play this build, so you could probably do it quite well. That being said, I am probably going to end up recommending Calms and Ghost Wraith for my Spellblade build, so there's going to be some level of competition for these items. Ultimately, Ghost Wraith is like a T4 that drops in Act 1. These things are never going to be expensive. Crown of Thorns is a T5 that drops in Act 1. Never going to be expensive. Calms might be a little bit expensive, but I also think it's in quite a bit lower demand than these other items. So take that how you will. Ultimately, these are just starter items. You're going to be swapping out of Calm's Roots. You're going to be swapping out of Ghost Wraith. You're going to be working towards that Ivory Tower. But we'll see. Maybe come patch notes, they just destroyed Ivory Tower. I don't freaking know. Anyways, this is just a fun little character I wanted to test out. I actually enjoyed quite a bit. And I would say if you want to min-max this character, I think it could turn out pretty well. I don't have any real, like, definitive trees to spec out, but know this. You basically just grab life, ES, minion damage, and that's what you want to prioritize. Eventually, you want to go for probably minion damage clusters with, like, flat ES, flat int, strength, stuff like that. Ivory Tower. Think Adorn Jewels for early min-maxing. Those are the sort of things you want to prioritize, and I think it would go pretty well. I don't know how much this character starts to plateau, but if you're rushing Sanctum, making some currency, and you're spring-loading your way into Ivory Tower and stuff, I think it could probably scale quite well. I'm not going to full recommend it. Just say I tried it out. I had a decent amount of fun with it. If you want to try it out, if you like Animate Blade, you want to have yourself some lightsabers following you around, I think it's pretty cool thematically. Ultimately, this is just another character I was testing out for League Start stuff, and I found it pretty fun. Not a minion guy myself, but I like to dabble in them every now and then, just give them a little try. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. As always, thanks for watching, take care, and peace out.